Hey everyone!
Hi everyone!
This is Nick and Holly from the MISA team, here with our January very first wine club tasting video.
Woo! So for those of you who don't know us, I'm Holly. I am the founder of MISA Natural Wine, and I'm the one that curates the boxes.
And I'm Nick. I am the co-founder of MISA, and I'm the one that does all the other stuff.
So we hope that you enjoy this new style of wine cards or wine information moving into 2021. As you all know, we are a very environmentally focused company, and the amount of paper we were starting to produce with the cards and the amount of potential for them to get crisscrossed on their way to you made it clear that we could find a better solution.
We're also a very small company, so we're hoping this makes it a little bit easier for us kind of on the day-to-day as well.
Yeah, so what you'll find on this page is a private page for whichever club you're in. There'll be information about each of the wines that you'd normally see on the cards on that page, as well as information about most of the wines that are in your club that I've drank. Basically, you can drink it with me, which should be fun. And then I also, for those of you that love taking notes, created a new evaluation tool so you can head on over and get the guide for that. And basically drink along with me, and if you want to evaluate all your wines, you can have a new way to do that with some printouts.
Cool. Well, hopefully everybody enjoys those wines, and let us know what you think.
Alright, so let's talk about some Greek red wines now. So this one is called Innocent Dove from Kostanzis. And they're one of the very first producers in Greece to have gotten the organic certification back in 1991. And their wines, we've had some of their orange ones before, and their red ones are great as well. They really focus on letting the grapes express themselves, as most natural winemakers do. But this one's a really fun one, and I liked it for the winter because it's a blend of what's like a very traditional blend for the region of Merlot and Xinomavro. But obviously he made it naturally. So Xinomavro normally is like incredibly tannic and intense wine, and Merlot is like medium everything, medium acid, medium body, and it's super fruit forward for the most part. So I really like that mix together. Alright, so the blend is a really interesting and not a typical one that you see, but it's a really nice marriage. So I really like the two of them together for a winter style of wine. And on the palate, you'll see why it's a bit different. So on the nose, it comes off as this really intense, potentially super tannic bomb of a wine, but the body is still quite balanced and really medium. Like it's not something like it's hefty, and you could put it with like some stews, you could put it with some meats, but like it's not a slab in a cab type style wine. Like it doesn't have that much tannin in it. It's still more in like that medium range. So it's nice because I feel like it's kind of like dark and broody and good for the winter, but not too like heavy. You could still have like more than one glass and not feel like, oh my gosh, this wine is so much. Like it's nice, it's balanced. So as far as like Greek red wines go, I would say this is a perfect example of like a lighter, nice, natural expression of one and a really great blend. And I hope you like it as much as we do, because we put it in most of the clubs this month. Alright, so this is a really fun sparkling wine that we have in the club this month. I was really excited when we got hooked up with Savio Suarez so we could bring Duckman to y'all. And Duckman's a really fun one. You may have seen them around where you are. They're really great price performing wines out of Portugal. It's actually a father and daughter duo, Luis and Maria Pato, and Pato means duck in Portuguese, thus they became Duckman, and they're super fun and funky, both in their winemaking and in their kind of take on wine. So if you go and look them up on social, they have some hilarious like duck costumes that they wear, and they just have this really great natural wine brand. It's what you would expect from like a fun, funky natural wine brand. So they're out in the Barreira area of Portugal, and they use mostly Portuguese grapes. So this one, I never say it correctly. I'm pretty sure it's called Fermina Pires, and that's 100%, and they make it in the pet nat style. So they take it and they create it in the pet nat style, and then they let it sit on its lees for a year. So it's got some really nice lees contact, which makes it a little bit like creamy, brioche, more like champagne style. Like think champagne style, but then also like pet nat funky. That's the perfect example of what this is, even with a little bit of like slight skin contact and orange wine attached to it. So it's just like this really cool representation of several different areas of natural winemaking that I loved, and I wanted to get it into every club, except for obviously the red, because it's not red, but it's such a perfect example of so many styles of natural wine. So looking at it, I obviously poured it a minute ago, so let's just take a quick look at the bubbles. For being a pet nat, they're honestly pretty fine and small, and I think that's from them doing the riddling themselves and letting it sit for that year, so they got quite concentrated. I don't have the correct kind of flute. If I did have a flute, I would probably drink this in a flute because it's actually a little bit more refined than I was expecting it to be. I thought it was going to be more like a big bubble pet nat style, but because it does have that extra age on it, it could do with the flute, because it could do with having the bubbles rise through more of the wine to create more complexity and nice aromatics for you. Luckily, it's still nice in my Zalto. So on the nose, I can actually, if you do use a flute, maybe sniff it from up here, but because I have mine so far down here, I can get quite a bit off of it. So a lot of like stone fruit and tropical fruit. Banana is a big one that I get off of it, but also things like pineapple and mango. Like there's a lot of tropical notes coming off of this, as well as like zest, but the zest would be more, I would say, like it almost goes in like a lime direction than like a lemon direction, or like apples even, like you would expect from a crisper wine. It's more, well, actually let's try it first and then I'll speak to that. Yeah, so it has this great roundness to it. So you know, it's not like a Prosecco or something where it's like crisp, acidic, and quick. Like this lingers. It lingers because it does have that year of lees contact after. Like for how much this costs, like it's a really complex and wonderful wine. That's why like I had to steal it all for the club, because what this actually represents and what they're doing is just like such a great representation of the natural wine world. Even if you don't like sparkling wine, I would guess you might still really enjoy this wine, because maybe just let it sit for a little while, because in like a glass like this, it'll get less effervescent over time, but like the body and the complexity in it is astounding for what this bottle is, what it's priced at. Yeah, and as far as pairings go, you could actually do a lot more with this than like a normal sparkling wine, because it does have that body. So you could do any of the normal stuff, like it'd be fine with oysters, it'd be good with like different types of cheeses, but you could even really get into like the heftier fish zone, because it does have a tiny bit of skin contact. Like you could have fish with maybe a slight sauce on it, or like a lighter salmon. Sushi would also work. Ooh, sushi with mango in it. That would be like my top choice. Like if I could pick anything to drink with this, that's what I would want. Like a roll that has like a little bit of mango and maybe even some like cream cheese in it, and then like tuna or something. So I hope you enjoy it. I was so excited when I found out we could get this wine for the January club, and I also wanted it to represent like a cheers to 2021. We made it. This is part of the new year, and we hope that you really enjoy this wine and this new style of learning about them. Alright, so talking about orange wines and Georgian wines, this is the first time we've had Georgian wines in the club or on our site, and we're really excited to have started with Ronnie. She has some really great selections out of Georgia, and we couldn't start without having an orange wine in the club. So this is the one that we picked. It's more of a entry, if you've had a lot of Georgian orange wine, this is more of like an entry-level one as far as tannin goes, because Georgian orange wines can be some of the biggest tannin bombs in the world, so best to like work up to those. This one is what we would consider like a great expression of it for the average orange wine drinker, or even for someone that doesn't know that they like orange wine yet, maybe a red wine drinker that hasn't tried orange wine yet. So a bit about these wines. So it is a blend of Rexatelli and Chinuri, and the producer is called Chubini, and I think that's how you say it. He only makes 2 wines, one red and one orange. So we have the orange in the club, and he only works in Curvy, which, as you may have heard before, is the amphoras, giant, well, actually, you can see it on the little label. They're these giant amphoras that are buried in the ground. So normally they'll be in the ground. And the story goes from Ronnie that he actually sleeps next to his Curvies while the wines are macerating, because he wants to make sure that he's there when the fermentation is over. So he really cares and makes a very tiny production. So we're really excited to have these small scale wines in the club for y'all. So let's talk about Georgian orange wine. Wine originally actually comes from Georgia, and if you know about the history of orange wine, basically there was no white wine as we know it when wine first started. Orange wine is basically white wine made like red wine. So when they first started making wine, they didn't think, oh, let's press these ones and not have any skin contact, and then press these red ones and have them have skin contact. They just did the same thing with both. So it's the oldest expression of how to make wine with this type of grape. So it is definitely orange, quite extracted. I think it was on the skins for 6 months, or 6-month maceration, and it was in the Curvy for 9 months. So this is a wine that could really potentially use some decanting or allow it some time before you drink it. Like, it's delicious, but it's totally different from the Vino Naranja or some of these other orange wines in that it needs some time before you'll actually get a lot out of it, because it does have tannin on it, and it really needs to breathe. So my first recommendation is to do that. You maybe don't even need to decant it, depending on if you're having like a glass or more. If you're going to drink the whole bottle, maybe decant it. Otherwise, put it in your glass and let it sit for a while. And then it's cool. Like, start by smelling it and you'll get some of like the savory notes, but as it starts to warm up and develop, you'll start to see things like beeswax or apricots and like stone fruit. And those things take a little bit of time to develop on this wine. You get a lot more lemon, or at least I am, on the palate than I was on the nose. And it does have quite bright acidity, more than you would expect from the way that it smells. So it could go with a lot of things. Like, it's definitely tannic compared to phenolic bitterness, if you're in the Orange Wine Club and you're watching those videos, because I'm feeling the tannin in the sides of my mouth versus the phenolic bitterness in the middle of my tongue. So that means you could put it with stuff that is a bit more like fatty. So if you are having like a fattier fish, like a hefty fattier fish, or like a lighter meat but that's fatty, you could put it with this. It would honestly be great with a cheese board, like of fatty cheeses, like cheddars or something like that. That could be really nice with it. It really could go with anything. I think we had it for, what did we have it for? We had it for Halloween, and Nick, I believe, made pork chops, which were quite fatty with like nice pieces on the edge, and like that really worked well with the tannin that you're getting with this deeper orange wine. So I hope that this is a nice, easy introduction for you to orange Georgian wines. Alright, so now we're going to go to Sicily, and we're going to talk a little bit about co-fermented wines. So this wine is from the FUSO line from Dario Sarantini, I think is his last name. And this is a project that he does that's basically like the local wines that people will come with their little carafes, big carafes, I guess, and bring back to drink at home, but on a natural scale. So it's like a fun entry-level wine from a Sicilian perspective, which they drink a lot of Nero d'Avola there. And then what they do is they actually add in 10% white grapes to bring in some acidity. So I love this wine. I love this entire line. I hope to get more from his FUSO line in the next couple of months. But this one I thought was nice for January because a couple of the wines that we've had so far, like the ones from Spain or from Georgia and Greece, have been a bit more broody, I would say. And this wine just has a bit more lightness to it. And I think a lot of that comes from that 10% white grapes, but also Nero d'Avola really just plays in a totally different area of red grapes. And it has all these characteristics that are quite different. So I would not put this with the same foods, or maybe I would, I don't know, but like it's almost like more jammy than some of the other reds that we've had so far. So starting with the color, it's pretty beautiful, like red ruby, and it's not super alcoholic. I think it's, well, you'll know because you have it. Yeah, only 11.5%, so quite light. And on the nose, it really has a bit of a jamminess to it that I enjoy. I don't enjoy it when it's like jammy and almost like thick, but jammy and light I always find to be a really nice pairing for natural wines in the winter, because sometimes when it's like chilly out, you just want a little bit of that, like, I don't know, like blackberry jam, cranberry jam. I'm not exactly sure what jam I'm going with on this one, but the fruit definitely has that quality to it, and that's on the nose. But then when we talk about getting into the palate, such an interesting mix, because it would not be the same if it didn't have the white grapes in it. I think it would fall a little bit flat, which is probably why he added it in, because that jamminess and that Nero d'Avola as it stands right now is, it's like a little bit, it's round, it's definitely round, but it's not very acidic. It's a little flabby. So having that extra 10% white added in is really, I can still honestly feel a little bit of the flabbiness in my mouth, like in the mouth feel, but with the amount of acid that was added in from the white, it makes it feel still like a really nice balance. So as far as like fun, easy drinking Sicilian wines, I honestly a lot of times don't even really like Nero d'Avola that much, but in natural expressions I normally do, because they do have this and add this freshness to it. So I think this is a really good one for if you're gonna have, I always go back to meats, but let me just think of I'm not a vegetarian, but I make a lot of vegetarian food. Like this would be a great one with different types of squash, like maybe like you stuff an acorn squash with like some rice and mushrooms and cranberries. Like, ooh, this with cranberries, I think, because again, it kind of goes back to that cranberry jamminess to it. That is a really great pairing. This would have been good for Thanksgiving too. So throw something in with like nuts or with like dried fruits, that would really crush it with this wine. It's also honestly like light enough and airy enough that you could have it by itself, or with like a cheese plate, probably like with a cheese plate, but like maybe leave out the charcuterie. I would do more like the soft cheeses. That's where it would really shine, with also like some honey with it, and some like berries on the side. Put it with the berries for sure, dry or not. But I love this wine. I think it's great for this time of the year, and I hope that you put it with some really yummy food. So now we're going to talk about a fun and quite, I would say, a good price performing red wine. This is one where if you need to buy a bunch of bottles, I think it's like $15-ish on the site. It's great for that because it is perfect with food. It's just light enough that if you're, having a post-COVID party and people are not having food with it, it's still great because it has that medium body. And it's really yummy. It's just like easy, fun red wine, but with still a bit of heft, which is why I put it in one of our winter months. So this is our Fermina Rosso. It's a Spanish wine. The label's quite funny, as I'm sure you'll see because you have it. So Spanish with the flag on their outfits, and it's like a little dragon doing some kebabs or whatever. Or no, that's not kebabs. The things that go on the grill. And that's a really good, ironic thing to put on there because it would be great with grilled foods. It's, well, actually, let's dive into it. So the color's super dark. And it's purpley, I think I would say, color-wise. It's young as well, and it's full of fruit when you first smell it. But then it also has a bit of like smokiness. Like it really punches above its weight for what it is because it does have, you know, a lot of different styles and types of notes. It's not just fruit in there. Like there's even a bit of leather, but really the first things I'm getting are like deep berries, like blackberry, plum, a little bit of blueberry. And then on the palate, I'm almost getting like some floral notes on the palate. I'm not getting much of it on the nose, but like you can even say that there's like some violets and some like more delicate notes on the palate. It's very acidic and tannic, but that's making a pretty great balance. A lot of times with these less expensive natural wines out of Alicante, you can have like absolute tannin bombs because they're good, but like the acid may not really balance out the tannin, so you really notice how dry your mouth is. And this one does a really good job of balancing those two things, but you'll feel both. Like I'm feeling a lot of emotion in the sides of my cheeks right now. This wine is good by itself, but it definitely, I would say, begs more for food. And if I was grilling, I would absolutely put something with this, whether it's burgers or kebabs or chicken, like whatever you're gonna throw on the grill right now. That smokiness would be really great with this wine. I wouldn't do like you couldn't do like a steak with this. It's not hefty enough for that. You could do like a veal though, or if you're gonna go like in the lamb or game direction, this could still hold its own against that. So you have a lot of really good options with this wine, and it just seems like a fun and easy one for you, like when you're not really sure what to drink with something, but you're having some food and it has some meats involved. This is definitely the one that I would grab, and when I do have a party post-COVID, a dinner party, this is definitely one that I'll be putting on the table. So we hope you really enjoy it. Now let's talk about some winter rosés. So when we first started working with Ronnie Selects, which is where we got all these Georgian wines that we just added, I thought that a Georgian rosé would be like the perfect one to add to something around January in the club, because this is not your Provençal light, fresh, on the porch rosé. It's a rosé, but it is not in that same style. So this one came from the middle-ish of Georgia, well, no, more towards the west. I'm not great with directions. And I love this wine. Was super excited when she was able to offer us almost all of the cases that they brought in the US. She only made 800 bottles of it. And it's a really not typical expression of this grape. So starting with them, I never say their name, grape, but Martvilis Marani, I think that's how it's pronounced. It's a complete family that works in wine, and they work with either amphoras or the Quervy. If you're from Georgia, that's where it all originated from. That's the amphora that's buried in the ground in like the most traditional, the birth of wine, where it all started. So they work in that style, and they also do some stainless steel. They do mainly all traditional grapes from Georgia, and I love this grape. And again, I'm not sure if I'll say it correctly either, but Aladasturi, I think is how it's said, something like that. And they changed the name when Georgia was invaded by the Arabs in I'm not sure what year, and the Alada part is a tribute to Allah, and their hopes when they renaming it that was that the Saracens or the Arabs at the time would not pull them up because they would be more like sacred grapes. So that's just kind of a fun story about this red grape, and it really produces a very like deep and savory red wine. So when you take it and you only do a light extraction, that savoriness is still there, which is why I was really happy and thought it would be good to put it in a winter style for a rosé, because it's not time to probably be I mean, I'll drink any wine anytime, but for January and the types of foods that you're probably eating, something that has a little bit more savoriness to it might be nice. So color-wise, it honestly almost looks like a Ramato style, like a Pinot Gris with skin contact, because it's got a little bit of an oranginess to it. But it is just red grapes. It's obviously unfined and filtered because you can see a little bit of the sediment rolling around in there. And on the nose, I mean, you get the savoriness right off the bat. Like, I'm getting like strawberries, but like I'm getting that through earth tones. Like I'm getting it through more like chalkiness or like forest floor. Like it's feels very like wet, earthy, and then underneath that I'm getting the fruit, which is pretty unique and why I was excited to throw this in, because it's not often that you get a rosé that's like that. And then on the palate, ooh, it's got biting acid like you would not expect from what you get on the nose. But it also has, again, like that minerality, I get it in my mouth as well. Like it's super earthy, and it definitely has, you know, some of those more like very light cherry and strawberry notes on it, maybe like a tiny bit of raspberry, but like that's all an undertone to more of this like very, yeah, like just rocky and savory, like it has salinity to it, which is interesting because it's not really next to the ocean or anything like that, but it's just like a really perfect food wine. So you could pair this with things you would not normally put rosé with. What would I put this with? Honestly, you could even put this with like a lighter stew. Like if you're having a stew with like ham in it or something like that, like that would be perfect with this, because you get to have it. I always like to like have my stews with a lighter fresh wine if it does have the backbone that can combat it, and this definitely does. So, and I like the fact that this can be chilled, because my tongue's always on fire when I'm drinking stew, so it's kind of nice to have that freshness and acidity while also having your stew. So that'd be my number one pick. I might actually pair it with that later this week, but you could do it with other things as well. You could do it with really like a lot of different styles of meat, roasted chicken, pasta with mushroom would be really good with this. Like something that has mushrooms in it would pair really well because of all the earthiness. So I hope that you enjoy this style. It's not one that you're going to come across really often, and I do think we'll have some extra bottles if you do like it to buy online, but hopefully they make more like this in the future so that we can get it, because again, this is very rare and we're excited to share it with you. So back in Italy, we're going to talk about Nerello Mascalese and Nerello Capua? I would never say the other one right. But the Nerello Mascalese is actually Nick's favorite grape, and this is a really interesting and different expression of it than what we normally propose around Thanksgiving. But to back up, so this wine is an Etna Rosso, meaning it comes from the foothills or the actual mountain of Etna in Sicily, from a producer called I Custori. And they are a family-owned vineyard that's been operating out of Sicily for a while, and they're quite traditional in the way they make their wines. You can see they even have you have the wine, so you know. They're fun little, I don't know what this is called, embossed, whatever it is, of like their vines on the front. So this is definitely more of like a classic style of Etna wine. And, well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. So first, it's quite deep in color, but definitely more on the red spectrum. It also has some age on it. It's 2017, so 4 years old, and you definitely can tell, like you can tell in the nose, you get some of like the age characteristics of it, which is really nice. So starting with the nose, it's like, it's a little bit, like there's definitely leather on it. Like the the fruit is secondary. So the first things I'm getting are what you would consider like secondary or tertiary aspects. Secondary is like, first there's fruit. That's first primary characteristics of wine. Second is like all the other aspects that come just generally from like the earth, which would be like earthiness or like chalk or leather, and then, well, leather depending on how it is. And then after that is characteristics that come from age or from wood. So we're getting some of the age characteristics on this. There's a lot of like baking spices also really come out again before, like I would say it's red fruits I'm getting first, like cherries, red cherries, but I'm getting like leather, a little bit of smokiness. And then some of like, yeah, the age characteristics, there's like I can't put my finger on like a candied quality to it. Hopefully you guys will figure it out and let me know too. And then when we try it, wow, that is smooth and savory. A lot more savory than I'm normally used to with Nerello Mascalese. Normally I'll put it with like a turkey. It's perfect with turkey. But this one can actually go a little bit heftier and heartier than putting it with like a turkey. You could put this with like pork chops with a heavy sauce on it. You could put it with maybe like brisket. I wouldn't go so far as like a steak, but like I would go into the barbecue realm. I think it's not the normal pairing I would put with a Nerello Mascalese, but I actually, having had barbecue a couple days ago, like this with ribs sounds pretty yummy. Probably because of that smokiness, a little bit of like leather on it. This is a special one. I love this one, and I love a couple of the other ones that we put in this club on the red front, but this is the one that, like, if I was gonna pick one, like, I know this goes in the 12 club, so if 12 is a lot of bottles for you, I would, like, save it. I would save it for maybe this time next year, you know, once COVID's over or something like that. I would save it and put it with a really nice meal, because it is really special. It has, like, it's quite complex, and it could keep aging, and it's gonna get even better after it ages. So if you do pick one that you know, don't feel like drinking right now, or you want to save, like, this is the one to do it. It's delicious as it is now, but it's gonna continue to get less of those fruit qualities and more of those aged qualities about it, and it's gonna continue to be really yummy with food over time. So I hope you really enjoy this expression of Nerello Mascalese, and I hope you have someone, even if you don't save it, just make sure you have something. It deserves nice food. So make sure you have some nice food to put with it when you do decide to drink it.